Today on Context, the high price people pay to protest. For best-selling author Marina Nemat, Dissent cost her years in Iran's most notorious prison. We'll ask about the faith that helped keep her alive. And Alex Neve of Amnesty International on the price of protest in Iran. I'm Lorna Duick, and you're watching Context, the show that looks at life beyond the headlines. Iran is a country that has never recovered from its revolutions. Now, with a volatile relationship with Israel and one of the most powerful leaders in the Middle East, Canada is concerned. Stephen Harper says Iran's government won't hesitate to use nuclear weapons for religious or political purposes. And although the world's eyes are on Iran, few are talking about the country's human rights record, which includes arrests of activists, horrific prisoner abuse, and blatant discrimination against minorities. What is the price of protest for thousands living in Iran? We'll put it in context. Joining us now is Alex Neve, the Secretary General of Amnesty International Canada. He is a former human rights lawyer and was awarded the Order of Canada for his work. Alex is in Ottawa. Thank you for joining us, Alex.
My pleasure.
You know, we often see Iran in the news because of nuclear power. Do you think our focus is misguided when it comes to Iran?
Well, absolutely. We would say, we're not going to suggest that it's wrong to be concerned about the nuclear issues, but there is far too little attention given to Iran's very troubling, long-standing and deeply entrenched pattern of massive human rights violations, which has gone on not just for years, but for decades, and more recently has actually been intensifying and worsening in the country. And that is where we really need to see some concerted international attention.
Okay, so tell us the kind of abuses you're documenting.
It cuts across the entire range of Iranian society, really. I mean, I think a lot of people are familiar with the long-standing concerns about women's human rights in Iran. Obviously, that continues to be a major concern. Political dissent, any opposition, any attempt to challenge the authorities in Iran, that is brutally repressed. Religious and ethnic minorities, so Christians, Baha'is, some of the minority Muslim groups, ethnic minorities like the Azerbaijanis, the Baluchis, and others, all again brutally repressed. Freedom of expression, anyone who tries to speak out, people who blog, use the internet, independent journalists, independent human rights groups, they all face terrible consequences. And then those who try to come to the defense of these people, human rights lawyers in particular, have also faced terrible consequences. And the violations are multitudinous. Certainly arbitrary arrest, individuals thrown in jail for years at a time because all they have done is exercise their own human rights or speak out about the rights of others, brutal use of torture, and widespread patterns of executions in the country now.
Can you tell us about the case of two Canadians, Saeed and Hamid, who were exercising what would have been normal democratic rights here in Canada, but they tried to exercise them in Iran? How are their cases moving along?
Well, I think Saeed Malikpour and Hamid Ghasemi Shal's cases are good examples that this comes close to home. Saeed Malikpour is a Canadian permanent resident. Hamid Ghasemi Shal is a Canadian citizen. And they both are imprisoned right now in Iran. Both likely face a very real risk of execution. Saeed Malikpour's execution may in fact be imminent at any day now if we can't turn things around. And in both instances, number one, obviously the death penalty from Amnesty's point of view and the point of view of many is always wrong. But in their case, it's doubly wrong because what they've been accused of is completely groundless. And that really goes to the heart of this wider pattern that individuals who are speaking out, who are exercising their rights to freedom of expression, in Saeed Malikpour's case, it's because he's very savvy about how to use the internet and has developed some programming that's being used widely. Those are the kinds of things that the Iranian government is very afraid of.
It's unbelievable to some of us that Canada cannot get its citizens out or at least released from prison. What are we doing as a Canadian government?
Well, I think there has been a lot of effort by the Canadian government with respect to these two cases, but the bottom line is Canada doesn't have a close relationship with Iran. We don't have a lot of influence when when someone from Ottawa asks a special favor of someone in Tehran, it's not necessarily going to be taken very seriously. And part of that, ironically, sadly, I suppose, is because Canada itself has been very outspoken about Iran's terrible human rights record. And in fact, every year we lead an important effort at the UN General Assembly in the fall to pass a resolution criticizing Iran's human rights record and calling for changes. And the Iranian government doesn't like that by any means, and always fights hard to try to see it defeated, unsuccessfully so far. But that's thrown an irritant into the Canada-Iran relationship, simply because Canada has done the right thing with respect to human rights. But it means that we have greater difficulty in trying to get the Iranian authorities to do what we'd like them to do when it comes to individual cases like this.
What can Canadians do to speak out for human rights in Iraq?
We do occasionally see bright spots, and we can see that sometimes an individual is released from prison in Iran, largely because there was meaningful international pressure. So certainly people who are concerned and want to add their voice to the many others who are calling for these violations to come to an end could come to our website, amnesty.ca. We very often have press releases, reports, and action materials, petitions and letters that people can sign on to or send off to Iran, perhaps on behalf of an individual like Saeed Malikpour, sometimes with respect to the overall situation in the country, calling for human rights reforms to take place. So certainly people should feel confident about using their voice. Certainly staying silent isn't going to get things better.
Alex Neve, Amnesty International, thank you.
Thank you.
Now it's time to find out what you think. Do concerns of nuclear weapons trump concerns about human rights in Iran? Send us your answers by phone, email, Facebook, or Twitter. Leave a video message on our website. I'd love to know what you think, so be part of the conversation. Our studio audience is taking a live vote, and I'll have those results when we come back. Plus, at 16, she was saved from execution only to be sentenced to life in prison in Iran. Torture, rape, and horrific crimes fell upon Marina Namat. She escaped to Canada, and now in her second book on memories from Iran, she tells the price she paid for protesting and why none of us should give in to silence.